All right, let's go to Zimbabwe now, where a judge there has ruled today that the country's main opposition party, the MDC Alliance, is not a political party. And this may have major implications, particularly for its leader, Nelson Chamisa. The judgment is in connection with a matter taken by the MDC Alliance to court, challenging the authority of Thokozani Khupe-led MDC outfit to recall members of parliament elected through the MDC Alliance ticket. Justice Chitapo says that the MDC T acted in accordance with the alliance documents signed by late former party president Morgan Tsvangirai when it recalled the quartet from parliament. Chamisa's camp lost the case with costs. Now, advocate Fadzayi Mahere is the MDC Alliance spokesperson and joins us now. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, so your reaction to the judgment today, what does it mean?
Well, the first thing to note, Peter, is that this High Court judgment contradicts a previous judgment of the High Court, which remains extant, which held that the MDC is indeed a political party. But the critical point to note is that, political parties do not derive their authority or their life from court orders. Political parties, are a product of the will of the people. And the MDC Alliance, as you know, ran a full campaign in the 2018 election. It ran and won elections at all levels. And it's currently, sitting in Parliament on the back of that. And it ran against, the MDC T, which is led by Khupe. So there can be no doubt that the MDC Alliance is a political party indeed. It's even, contested in the election petition before the Constitutional Court. And there was no debate at that point about, whether or not the party was a legal persona. So if you look at what Justice Chitapo said, it was really, a technical issue about whether or not the legal status of the party had been pleaded. But it does not go to the root of whether or not we exist as a political party, because that's not for the courts to decide, because we are a voluntary association. And therefore, our status as a political party cannot be brought into question.
All right. I mean, you're a lawyer, so, we talk about juristic persons, we talk about the spirit of a law and perhaps the actual legal standing of the law. So some people might say, hang on, wasn't the MDC Alliance a coalition of a group of parties coming together, and that the MDC Alliance per se isn't a party, more a grouping of parties?
Well, I think it's beyond question that prior to just before the 2018 election, those parties came together and formed a unitary party. And, the old Secretary General Douglas Munzura, who now contests that position, himself stated in very clear terms that now we are a single political party. And even when the party went to Congress in 2019, all the various political actors who had emanated from different political parties, stood for various positions in Congress as one unit. So, there's no debate that even the constitution of the MDC Alliance, dispensed with the various individual political parties and has created a single voluntary association, which is now a single unit, the MDC Alliance. So it's important to note that, what's the bigger issue that's at play at the moment is the attempt by, Emmerson Mnangagwa's government to try and destroy the main opposition in order to capture it and ensure that Zimbabwe goes back to being a one-party state, and trying to undermine the real opposition. Because as you know, Zimbabwe is in a state of crisis, and the ruling party would so want that all the focus is diverted from the immense state failure, the hunger crisis that we face, the broken public health system, the crippled education sector, our dead economy, and bring to all these political gains in the opposition. Focus instead on the national crisis, because that's where Zimbabweans, that's what Zimbabweans are interested in at the moment, not these political gains.
All right, so the courts, as you said, we've got contradicting judgments now. What does this suggest about the legal system and the courts themselves in their ability to adjudicate over matters. It does sound as if perhaps if one reads a lot of the reporting that's out there, that it could suggest that some of these courts are not acting judicially but more politically.
Well, what it suggests is that the matter is not a legal one any longer,
right,
but it's definitely a political one. It's an attempt not just by the judiciary, but Parliament, by various institutions to try and undermine the existence of the main opposition. And, the main resolve of the MDC Alliance currently is to take that fight to the political arena. We derive our mandate from the will of the people, and it's the will of the people that gives us our existence. So we go back to the people. It's the daily issues that the people face that, give us expression and that, are the reason for our existence. So we will continue to champion those issues and not be dissuaded and diverted, these diversionary tactics. And, it is a political game. We do see that Mnangagwa, who faces a crisis of legitimacy himself, not only from, the contested electoral, issue that took place in 2018, but his performance legitimacy. He started off saying that, look, I'm the change, I'm different from Mugabe, Zimbabwe is open for business, I'm going to change the economy, I'm going to turn that around. All those promises have fallen flat on their faces, so he's got a very large, performance legitimacy crisis, and he's trying to draw attention away from that and instead, try and, divert people's attention by, all these games in the opposition and trying to undermine them. Not to mention all the corruption that's taking place in Zimbabwe at the moment, not to mention the triple-digit inflation. Inflation currently stands at over 750%. The UN put out a report, earlier this year to state that over 60% of Zimbabweans are facing starvation and that the crisis is man-made. This all points to the failure of Mr. Mnangagwa's government, and his answer to that failure is to try and, undermine the legitimacy of the very opposition that's holding him to account. He doesn't want, the opposition in Parliament. He doesn't want the Public Accounts Committee, bringing him to account for, the billions that have been looted under Command Agriculture. That's why, that's the bigger political play that's taking place. And what we say as the opposition is that we will continue to fight for a better life for all Zimbabweans, those who are in Zimbabwe, those Zimbabweans who are in South Africa, and the UK, and the diaspora, because, at the end of the day, what's important for us is to win Zimbabwe for change.
All right, so are you going to go back to the courts to challenge the decision, or are you done with the courts now?
I mean, obviously the party will have to, follow its constitution and the protocol. There is a procedure that's in place for making decisions. And this decision involves, consulting the various structures. It also involves taking the advice of the party's lawyers. All of that will be done and a decision will be made ultimately as to, what the best course of action is to take. But, what's certain at this point is that we've got a pattern, from the various court judgments that have emanated in respect of the MDC Alliance, coupled, of course, with the decision by the Speaker of Parliament, which shows that there's a clear attempt to try and undermine the existence of the main opposition that's led by President Chamisa. We will do every single thing that we can to ensure that we safeguard the legacy of the opposition and ensure that Zimbabwe does not return to one-party rule, and that the main opposition, its sincerity, is not captured by Mnangagwa's regime in the manner that he's captured all other state institutions.
Okay, Fadzayi Mahere, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for talking to us so late in the evening, but an important issue to discuss. Thanks so much indeed for your time.